Energy drinks are often seen as simple tools, something you grab when you're tired, something that helps you stay awake, stay focused, and push through long hours. But what if I told you that Red Bull isn't actually in the business of selling drinks at all? In fact, the drink itself might be the least important part of the entire company, because Red Bull isn't really competing with Coca-Cola, and it's not trying to win shelf space in supermarkets like traditional beverage brands. What it's doing is something far more powerful. It's selling an identity, a lifestyle, and a feeling. And once you realize that, everything about the company starts to look very different. Launched in Austria in 1987, it broke almost every rule in the book. Traditional beverage companies focus on taste, price, and distribution. Red Bull ignored all of that. The drink didn't taste particularly good. It was more expensive than most alternatives, and it wasn't even widely available at first. Instead, Red Bull created scarcity. It showed up only in specific places: nightclubs, bars, and university campuses. There were no massive advertising campaigns, no celebrity endorsements, just subtle placements that made it feel almost exclusive, like you weren't supposed to find it. And that's exactly what made people want it. But here's where things get interesting. Most companies sell products, but Red Bull was selling something else entirely: a feeling. From the very beginning, the brand positioned itself around energy, adventure, risk, and rebellion. It wasn't about staying awake. It was about living on the edge. They weren't targeting everyone. They were targeting a specific kind of person: the ambitious, the restless, the ones who didn't want to be average. And instead of telling people to drink Red Bull, they showed them what kind of person drinks it. To do this, Red Bull avoided traditional advertising and created its own world. A world where the brand was everywhere, but never directly selling. They invested heavily in extreme sports, underground events, and youth culture. Not ads, but experiences. Not promotions, but stories. And over time, Red Bull stopped being a product and became a symbol. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the company had taken things even further. It wasn't just sponsoring events anymore, it was creating them. From motocross to skateboarding, from snowboarding to cliff diving, Red Bull embedded itself into every high adrenaline activity imaginable. But the real genius wasn't just visibility, it was integration. Athletes didn't just represent Red Bull, they became part of the brand itself. Then came a major shift. Red Bull realized that attention is more valuable than products. So instead of paying for media, they decided to build their own. This led to the creation of Red Bull Media House, a full-scale media company producing films, documentaries, magazines, and massive amounts of digital content. At this point, Red Bull wasn't even pretending to be just a beverage company anymore. It had become a content empire. And then, in 2012, came the moment that defined everything. Red Bull sent a man, Felix Baumgartner, to the edge of space and had him jump. No special effects, no tricks, just a human being falling from the stratosphere. Millions of people watched it live across the world. It wasn't just a stunt, it was a global event. And in that moment, Red Bull didn't just sell energy, it sold the idea of limitless possibility. This is what makes Red Bull different. When you drink it, you're not just consuming caffeine, you're buying into something psychological: confidence, performance, boldness. You're not thinking, I need energy. You're thinking, I want to feel like that. And this is the part most people miss. Red Bull could change its formula tomorrow, and it wouldn't matter, because the product isn't the core of the business. The brand is, the lifestyle is, the perception is. That's why competitors struggle. They try to copy the drink, but they can't copy the identity. Most beverage companies follow a simple model: produce, distribute, advertise, sell. But Red Bull flipped the entire system. It creates culture, builds an audience, sells an identity, and then sells the product as a result. The drink is just an entry point, because Red Bull doesn't rely on need, it relies on desire. You don't need Red Bull, but you want what it represents, and that's far more powerful. So when you look at a can of Red Bull, you're not just looking at a drink. You're looking at a media company, a lifestyle brand, and a psychological machine designed to associate itself with speed, power, and freedom. Red Bull doesn't compete in the beverage industry, it operates above it. While others fight for shelf space, Red Bull fights for your attention, your identity, and the way you see yourself. And once they win that, selling the drink becomes easy. So next time you pick up a can of Red Bull, ask yourself, are you buying a drink? Or are you buying the idea of who you could become? Because in the end, Red Bull was never just a drink company. It was always something more.